discussion. You're requested to approach a microphone, or we don't have a microphone here, just speak up so you're heard over Zoom. State your name for the record and use limited time to present your remarks in order that others may be given the opportunity to speak. The normal process on any agenda item is for the chair to read the item from the agenda. The board is given an opportunity to comment on the issue and or place a motion on the floor. An opportunity for discussion may be presented, at which time the public may participate, and a roll call vote will follow. Roll call vote, please. On
Kyle.
here.
Walter.
Yes.
Here.
All right, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic. Under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh, my goodness. Can I get a motion to amend the agenda to have us moving up item number 9, radio access fees, to following the consent agenda?
Make a motion that we amend the agenda to move item 9 to immediately following the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Kyle.
Yes.
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 For clarification, do we need to approve the agenda, or was that? I think we're good because with that vote has where we're at. Perfect. All right, consent agenda. Number 5, approve organizational meeting minutes from January 3rd, regular meeting minutes. Approve December 2022 claims. Approve claims as audited. File receipt of cost allocation plan report and authorize chair to sign. File the manure management plan, Edler Brothers Farm Section 36, ID 58297. And Pickard Brothers, ID 57598, 1777 300th Street, Melbourne. Additionally, we have personnel changes. Approve new hire of Marshall County Conservation Director Emily Herring as Marshall County Conservation Director. Approved new hire Veterans Services Officer, new hire Sherry Kokenauer as County Veterans Service Officer, part-time at 28 hours. And then approve new hires of jailers, Brian Thompson, the Sheriff's Office Jailer, permanent full-time, as well as James Hall, Sheriff's Office Jailer, permanent full-time. And that is the end of consent agenda. Do I have a motion, please?
Mr. Chair, I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please. Yes.
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 You do number
Quick
4.
question, proclamation.
I skipped right by that, didn't I? Going backwards,
Blended.
going backwards, number 4, we have a proclamation for Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month. Did we have anyone that was going to read this? I'm happy to read it. I have no problem.
A lot of times Tori comes down and reads it, but. Oh, there.
Perfect. Well, then I will declare the proclamation here for the board. Whereas the United States was founded upon the principle that all people are created with inalienable right to freedom, and added the 13th Amendment to the Constitution, making slavery legal. And whereas slavery within the United States today is most often found in the form of forced labor, sex trafficking, which weakens our social fabric, increases violence and organized crime, and debases our humanity. And whereas this heinous crime is found within our own community, and whereas the Rotary Club of Marshtown is working towards the abolishment of all forms of human trafficking through education, volunteerism, advocacy, and collaboration. And whereas even though awareness of this crime is growing, human trafficking continues to go unreported to its isolating nature and the misunderstanding of its definition and the lack of awareness about its indicators. And whereas increased community education on how to identify victims of human trafficking, along with increased knowledge of local resources and services for those affected by these criminal actions, can help restore freedom and dignity to identified survivors, as well as help diminish the number of future victims. And whereas every business, community organization, faith community, family, and individual can make a difference by choosing products that are not made by forced labor, by working to protect our young people from sexual exploitation, by addressing the problem of internet sex trafficking and pornography, and by becoming more aware of the problem and possible solutions. Now, therefore, the Marshall County Board of Supervisors do hereby proclaim the month of January 2023 as Slavery and Human Trafficking Prevention Month, and encourage all our citizens to become more informed on this growing problem, to be vigilant and report suspicious activity, and to work towards solutions to end trafficking in all its forms in our community. If you see something that doesn't look right, take action and call the Human Trafficking Hotline at 888-3737-888. Sign this day, January 17th, 2023. My aunt is a sister in the Omaha area, and she fights and works on human trafficking. So I certainly appreciate that this was brought to us to have this awareness, because those that are out there that are vulnerable, we need to keep them safe. So anything we can do to have this proclamation is good for me. Any other discussion? And we don't need to vote on that, do we? Awesome. All right, moving on to, we're fast forwarding up to radio access fees on number 9, discussion and possible action. Issue is brought up because I know several of the townships have mentioned that they're at their levying capacity and these fees can tip scales on there. So it's an item that I think we should discuss. And well, first, any of the board members have anything to say before we open up to public?
Well, we addressed it about a month and a half ago or so at our last one of our meetings. I think we took the access fees from $20, potentially of $20 a radio, to $10 a radio, and that was approved at that time. So I guess we're in the middle of more discussion on that.
Yep.
So Steve, a question I have about that is, and of course, you have the history and are much more familiar with this than I am, but I've been kind of following the topic. Are we comfortable that the number of radios per community is the right amount and the right size for this system? So I'm just thinking about access fees on all radios, or how do we know that we're not paying too much for the number of radios per community?
I guess it wasn't our choice to decide how many radios each community was going to have. So that was out of our control. I don't know.
Do you feel comfortable that we have the right amount per community?
Oh, I think we do. In fact, I think maybe some of the departments have maybe turned back radios.
Okay.
I guess I know Brad had brought this to my attention, so I'll allow Brad to speak on this issue. Oh, yeah, absolutely, please.
It'll also pick the sound up better if we get you in the middle a little bit too.
As real briefly, Brad Fons, State Center Fire Chief, President of the Marshall County Fire Chiefs Association. Someone has been intimately involved with this project since June of 2019 when it began its infancy. To address that question on radio counts, just briefly. Yes, many departments went with obviously needs rather than wants. Once it was decided that each agency was responsible for the purchase of those radios, many departments had to make cuts. In State Center's example, we did not put a mobile radio in every piece of apparatus, just due to the expense. So we'll be operating on portables only. I know there's one other department that is strictly on portable radios only. They opted not to put a mobile in their apparatus for the simple sake of trying to cut costs. So I'm confident that the radios that are out there in at least the rural agencies are at least what they can operate with, maybe not what they would be an ideal number, but what they can afford. I did ask Mr. Heil to speak today to kind of give some background on this access fee. I think since Ms. Heil or Ms. Hibbs and Mr. Heil are new to this, I could spend just a few minutes giving some background information and a brief update on the system where we are to date. We've been having bi-weekly meetings, the sheriff's been involved in those as well. We're close to closing out the project and signing final documentation that'll be coming in the next few weeks. There's just a few housekeeping things at the owned sites that need to be taken care of, and that will be done. All the volunteer agencies have migrated to the new system. Radios are in place. I think the last department got their mobiles installed yesterday. The page gate that was discussed at the last meeting, that was actually installed and completed the week of that meeting. So that is being rolled out as we speak. And I give a brief testimonial to the coverage. The main reason we did this was because the VHS system that the volunteer services were on had reached end of life. Maintenance was an issue, coverage, missed calls, all the above. With the addition of the St. Anthony site, and we're going to fill in holes and gaps where there was not radio coverage on the P25 system. Last month, one of our other EMTs and myself were up in the northwest corner of the county, about a mile from Hardin County, a mile from Story. It's about as far northwest as we could get. I'm confident to say, I'm guessing the sheriff could probably attest to this as well, but prior to the St. Anthony site, that was a big hole up there. And unfortunately, with a CPR call, I was able to key up the radio and talk back to dispatch and the incoming unity point ambulance without any issue. So just one brief testimonial, and I'm sure the deputies who patrol every corner of the county would also attest that the coverage has greatly improved. So the project did meet our needs. Previous to the county assuming ownership of the radio system, we were on what was called a leased arrangement with Raycom. They owned the network. Of the 189 users who were on it prior to that, which was primarily law enforcement, Unity Point, and Marshtown Fire Department, paid a user fee or access fee to Raycom as the owner of the system. It's about $33 per month per radio. I liken that to your cell phone plans. We can't all go out and build towers to have access, so we subscribe or sign a contract with USA or T-Mobile, Verizon, whomever, to be able to use their towers wherever we go. That's the arrangement that the users in the county had with Raycom as the owner of the system. That model was a non-starter for the volunteer services. When we look at the radios that those departments were going to need at $33 a month, for many of those departments, the total access fee was more than their total operating budget. So definitely a non-starter. So then we decided on option 2 to propose that to the board, where we as a county own the system, which was the model that almost every other SARA county in the SARA network, which is the shared area radio agreement. It's a group of about 20 counties in the central part of the state that are on the SARA system. Most of them did it where they owned the network. At that time, in the discussions being had, we didn't know of any county that charged an access fee. So there were going to be very limited recurring costs for the services once we went with that model. The county now owns the system. The Board of Supervisors, as the leaders of the county do own it, it was built by the taxpayers. And since we own it now, there are no longer any access fees being paid to Raycom. There is maintenance being paid to Raycom as our vendor. They will maintain the subscriber units, which is the portable radio, mobile radios that we all use, the infrastructure, so the maintenance at the sites, as well as the consoles in dispatch. That is not a financial burden on the board specifically, because the Marshall County Communications Commission is covering all the maintenance costs for the system. Knowing all that, it was difficult for some of us who've worked on this for 3.5 years to comprehend that decision that was made. There would be a fee charged to us. I look back and about 6 times I or someone with the radio project was before this body, twice before the Communications Commission. And looking back through my notes, no less than 12 times was maintenance or radio fees discussed. And in that time, at each of those presentations, the benefit of owning our own system was shared, and the benefit being no fees. In the 2.5 years from December 19, when the first presentation was made to this body, to last spring, no one questioned or brought up the fact that there potentially could be fees. So we were operating under the presumption that there would be no recurring cost. So when the decision was made in the 11th hour, it kind of came as a shock to many of us. The board challenged or tasked the Communications Commission and the Technical Oversight Board to research these operating policies and procedures and such for the system. At the May 17th TOB meeting, they passed unanimously that for public safety to include public works and secondary road users have access with no fees to include Unity Point. So Unity Point was brought into that umbrella of users on the system with no fees. That recommendation then went to the commission at their July 7th meeting. They passed unanimously with one abstention that no government public service will pay a fee. To give a little background, TOB is comprised of the chief deputy, all the police chiefs in the county, Unity Point rep, fire rep, and EMS rep. So kind of your subject matter experts. The commission, as I'm sure most of you know, all the mayors, the sheriff, EMA, and board of supervisor rep, and a Marion Township rep. So we've got our subject matter experts and our primary elected officials out in the county recommending no fees. I've had discussions with a broad range of the public sector, from citizens to chiefs to mayors, township trustees, and even folks outside of our county who are on the SARE system have been watching our project progress. And they all ask the same question about why would we charge to use our own system. And I don't have a great answer for that, especially when the whole county benefits, all public safety people, citizens alike. To the volunteers, I heard back, I polled all of our fire and EMS chiefs, I heard back from all but 2 or 3. When we look at their budgets for their radio counts, even at $10 per month per radio, percentage of their operating budget ranges from 4 to 12%. That right away, July 1, when their budget year starts is gone. It is spent on these fees. It may not seem like much, but when those operating budgets range from $4,100 to $62,000, it's a significant amount. We held our annual city council and township trustee meeting on Saturday, and many of the trustees asked the question, well, what happens if we can't afford it? What if we cannot provide you the funds you need for the fees? And if you don't know, the maximum levy a township can assess for fire protection is 60 3/4 cents. Most of the townships in the county, last time I looked, are either at or very close to that max levy. They don't have the ability to generate more revenue to increase our budgets just whenever we need it. They have to, look at control and the money they have coming in. And I told them, I said, something will have to give. If they can't fund it, it'll be at the expense of updating gear that is out of date and not compliant. So, providing training for our members, because there's certain fixed costs we have to spend. We have to insure our equipment. We have to put fuel in trucks or else they can't roll out the door. There's certain things that we just can't do without. And those other options we'll just have to give if they can't fund it. The system as a whole is a countywide service. We all benefit. The new systems I mentioned filled in a lot of dead areas in the county. And that was a safety concern for not only fire and EMS, but law enforcement as well. And ultimately the citizens who we provide that protection for. We have countywide mutual aid agreements. The day of the tornado, every single fire department in the county responded into the city of Marshalltown. Marshalltown Fire responds out into the county for expectation calls on motor vehicle accidents. City PD, the county, and the state center PD and the county have a great relationship, helping each other. So it's not a Marshalltown State Center, a Haverhill, or it's not an individual community. It's the county as a whole that benefits from this. And personally, I guess I look at this as a service that's really not unlike anything else the county provides. When Paul and his crew go out and maintain the gravel roads or plow snow in the winter in Marietta Township, I don't think they send Marietta Township a bill for plowing there. It's a county service that is provided to all taxpayers and they all benefit. The taxpayers built the system. It's I guess to me and some of us who have spoken, it's kind of an abstract thought that we would be charged to use something that we built as taxpayers. a comment was made at one point that we, the volunteer services, need to have skin in the game. And I will say we have a lot of skin in this game. When it was decided that we would buy our radios and equipment, many of us spent $55,000 to $60,000 to purchase the equipment. It was a sacrifice we made, our trustees made, but it was definitely a need that needed to be done. And something else I found interesting, I'll share some numbers with you. Right now, total public safety users on the system, once we sign on, will be 439. We add 80 radios for county roads. That's 519. We add the 33 radios that Unity Point has. That's 552 users that will be on the system that will be charged as $10 a month. That's going to generate about $66,000 per year. Of that number, 158 of those are county-owned radios. So EMA, SO, and secondary roads. That's not even including the radios at dispatch. That's about $19,000, or 29% of the money that we generated is coming from the county. So it's the county paying themselves. It's not new money. It's a simple transaction from line to line. So the new money, if you will, that's being generated by charging the outlying agencies is a little over 47,000. So the bottom number for new money isn't as high as one would think. Of the 19 or 20 counties that are in the Sarah system, only one that I could find charges a fee to their users. And that just happened to be, interestingly, the one that was shared at the October 11th supervisor meeting, and it's our neighbor to the west, Story County. And they are unique in that prior to them coming on board with Sarah system a little over a year ago, they were operating a system owned by Electronic Engineering. They have been paying electronic engineering a user fee, radio fee, network fee for many, many years. So those agencies had that fee built into their budget. Story County decided to continue with that model to cover their maintenance because they'd already had that fee budgeted for a very long time. In Marshall County, like many of the others, our communications commission is going to cover the maintenance. And that is the norm throughout the Sarah system, whether it's a 911 board or something like a communications commission or the counties is covering the maintenance. I called 4 random Sarah counties when this discussion started last spring. Dubuque, Buchanan, Iowa, and Washington, asked them all the same 4 questions to get sort of objective feedback. And not one was charging any public safety or public service entity a user fee. And they all asked me, why would you charge yourselves something when you owned the system yourselves? I said that it was a valid question. Now, I'm not gonna lie, there are expenses to owning and operating your own system. It's not any different than keeping up this building, heating, cooling, the trucks that the county secondary roads has. There are expenses involved. Those were shared last fall. I can run through them line by line if you'd like. But in the short of it, there's about $59,000 in fixed costs that would be associated with operating the system. That includes insurance that was gathered from our county insurance provider, utilities at the sites. They do have climate controlled shelters, so we have to heat and cool them. There's LP involved. There's generators at these sites, so annual preventive maintenance on those, and then rent on the 2 sites that we do not own, which is the Iowa Avenue Tower and the one at Collins. About 59,000, give or take. Those numbers came from insurance provider, obviously, other Sarah counties, and then some figures from Raycom and what they would estimate. Starting year 3, there's some variable costs that are unknown. Worst case would be about $29,000. That is for some third-party equipment that is at these sites that is not covered under the maintenance contract. But worst case, starting year 3, about $88,000 to operate, $2.7 million system. I looked up Iowa Department of Management for total expenditures for the county for fiscal year 22, about 36 million. Public safety alone is 10,008,000 and change. When we look at this 88,000, it's 0.9% of the public safety line within the county. And that's a far cry from the 4 to 12% that we would absorb by paying these fees. In closing, on behalf of the chiefs I've talked to, the Fire Chiefs Association, we're just asking that this decision be reevaluated. This is new to everyone. It's we never owned our own radio system. It's a big thing and it's new and it's a learning curve. A lot of counties have done it prior to us. There's no sense in reinventing the wheel. And again, my personal opinion, our county over the last 30 some years has not made this any easier with the layers. We have the 911 board, we have the communications commission, the EMA commission, and now a radio governance board. So there's 4 entities now, or 4 boards that somehow have their fingers in the communications and none of them own it. You do, or we do as a county, and then we're ultimately responsible. So there's a lot of layers that, and then groups at play here that are contributing to it. So yeah, on behalf of us, we ask that this be reconsidered. It's going to be a tough pill to swallow for all public safety agencies, especially volunteers. And the principle and the main presumption, maybe shame on us for that, but was that through the 3 years of discussions, there would be no fees, and then the decision is made. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have. To fill in any blanks.
May I ask one?
Yeah.
You mentioned the year 3 expenditures of 88,000. Are we on, what year are we on right now? Because we're working on budget right now.
Year 1,
We're on year 1, so
based ownership. Well,
we took January 1, so it's a calendar year. If I could get your spreadsheet, hard copy, so I can make sure we've got the budget numbers right, that would be awesome. I feel better about the budget now that we're not on year 3.
Brad, I was under the impression that this was going to be a savings account. This $10 a radio was going to be a savings account to replace radios 10, 12, 15 years down the road. Now, is that not correct?
That is not my decision. That's ultimately the board's on how you handle the money that is going to be generated from this. As far as the radios, I think it's been assumed by every agency, shared involved, the radios would be on each individual agency to replace. I don't think there's any, it's my expectation.
Not on the expectation from the board of supervisors of the county and be up to that agency that owns those radios. You know, you're gonna have consumables, batteries don't last forever, pieces get broken. Those would be at the responsibility of the agency that owns the radio. That was my initial.
So none of those dollars go back to our rural fire departments.
Yeah, it was a savings account for the system and things that might fail that weren't covered under maintenance agreement is what the concept was, I think.
And then I think once the idea, or it was shared or became known that there was some operating expenses, whether that goes to that or a capital improvement. Either way, we shared this back in this sometime last fall when we speak to the future degradation and upgrades of the network. You know, our maintenance agreement is 10 years. So it's not as if at year 11, we're gonna have to spend another couple $1 million to build a new system. Components will fail eventually, as all electronics and computer-based systems do. They'll need to be upgraded. But it was shared that Raycom is working through this right now with some counties that have been on this system for 5 to 10 years. They're starting to reach the end of their 10-year maintenance agreement. And rather than having $1 million or $2 million sitting in the bank year 11 to start replacing things, they've gotten kind of creative and for what I would call an extended bumper to bumper warranty. They're trying to what they call evergreen the project or the system, meaning why would you replace a server or a router or something at one of these sites year 11 if it doesn't need it? You can extend it out to year 15. Great. So they're working in this extended maintenance agreement to cover these components that ideally, it's going to be more than our current maintenance, but hopefully there's not going to be a need for a couple $1 million once the end of that maintenance agreement is reached. So having a big bucket of money sitting there at the end, that's a long ways off. Ideally, these counties are starting to do this about year 5 or 6 of their maintenance, start working towards that. You don't want to do it year 9. There are options for those upgrades down the road.
Originally, I thought that the $10 was going to be palatable to our rural fire departments, but am I seeing, is there a group feeling that that still is not acceptable?
Got a lot of real chiefs here. Anybody disagree?
Brad Moskowitz, and I would agree, that this is fairly crippling for our small budgets. I agree with Brett, our township is taxing max levy. They're not able to increase their funding to increase our budget to cover these costs. So like Brad said, we have to make a choice on whether or not we cut equipment or what we cut out of our budget in order to fund it.
When we talk about costs of other items we have to buy, I don't know if many people outside the fire arena know how much we have to spend out of our budget. You know, I bought a set of gear, coat and pants, that's it. For one of our members last fall, $2,980. A couple years ago, it was $2,200.
That's cheap.
Boots are 300, helmets over 300, gloves 100. The hose lengths we all buy are in 50-foot sections. The last 1 3/4 we bought was over $220. The last nozzles we bought, $750. I don't even want to talk about the cost of trucks. And then, you know, the radios, as the sheriff said, we're responsible for replacing those, about $3,100 for radio. So when you look at the state center, our radio fees are going to be $3,100 to $3,200. That's a set of gear that is not going to be able to be replaced.
So I just mouthed to Jared, but I was Washington Township clerk before I started this job. It's been the same rate for a long, long time. The expenses are a whole lot different than they were 10, 15 years ago. A lot more expenses, and I think it's something we need to change legislatively. Do we want to, cripple everybody with more taxes? No, but we also need to provide the service properly. And we all know that a truck, okay, you get the demo version, it's what, 400,000? It's not the demo version, it's $500,000. And I can quote those numbers because my husband's a trustee, so I know what you were quoting them Saturday, but it's also what farm equipment costs. Things just cost a lot. And I don't see when any of the fire stations I listen to that are doing anything exorbitant. They're just trying to get by and provide good service. But we can't levy enough money. So I think it's something legislatively that you all can probably get an ear down in Des Moines.
Yeah, it's certainly something for the future. I don't know if that necessarily addresses it today, but.
No,
but,
it doesn't.
You know, especially as we're looking to those infrastructure upgrades for the future,
Mhm.
it's something that absolutely should be looked into. Do you have any other questions for Brian?
Well, I guess I'm curious as to, are there any other comments or information to contribute to what Brad's already said?
Patrick Cornell, Green Mountain Fire. I'm on the different end of the spectrum, I guess, a little bit. I didn't argue the fee. I was hoping there wouldn't be a fee, but we had enough wiggle room in our budget. And again, Green Mountain is an anomaly that we are one of 8 in the state of Iowa that have 0 incorporated areas in our district. From my research. So I don't know if that played into that or not, but I view this as an extension of 911. And whether you live in Green Mountain or in Rhodes or Gilman or Marshalltown, the cost of 911 to have the service available to you should be spread across the entire county. And with this radio system being, in my view, again, an extension of the 911 system, why shouldn't that also be spread out against every parcel in the county? Because if you do it, if we're going to base it off of the radios, the numbers of the radios, what was the number you said that was counted? So I had 130 per city.
158, I think, 519, including county roads.
519. So
You mean just Marshall County?
just Marshall
Oh,
County.
158, sorry.
No. What was just Marshalltown, sorry?
I don't have the.
You don't have
I don't
that.
have the breakdown.
I had 130 radios. That was just an estimate. Because I don't know what the PD runs. And at the $10 rate, that was 15,600. The 33 UPH radios at $33 a radio per month, $13,068. So you're in the $29,000 range. And the other radios, would they not be put on the county taxpayers? The sheriff's office, every fire department, obviously, that's coming out of our fire budgets. But you know, like an unincorporated resident or property owner would be paying for the sheriff's office, the radios at the secondary street department, county conservation if they decide to come on. So now you're putting, from what I got, that's 380 and 45,600. So if it's our intent to protect the rural property owner, as was said back in October, that we didn't want an unincorporated area or resident or property taxpayer paying for radios or users in Marshalltown, I think we've kind of missed the mark a little bit and have that backwards, in my opinion.
Thanks, Pat.
Do you have something, Rhonda? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I'll hit the mayor first and I'll get to you.
I think 69% of the people in Marshall County live in Marshalltown. And I joke at these E911 commission meetings that we're kind of the rich uncle. We also do provide the communication. I would ordinarily be thinking, well, we want to save money here, let people out in rural areas. Great. Instead, here to say, I think from the city of Marshalltown standpoint and from the county standpoint, this really ought to be a county expenditure. At one of the meetings about a year and a half ago, or 2 years ago, the county board of supervisors person who was on those boards was explaining what was going on, and he discovered that we had a school district in the southern part of the county that didn't have any coverage. And I found myself saying, if the public knew, if the voters knew, whether the county voters, small town voters, or city of Marshalltown voters knew we had these unsafe areas, there would be an uproar about not having coverage everywhere. And I think that was what maybe sparked the ultimate decision to take ownership of the tower, make sure that we had these coverages there. And so from somebody who's probably taxed doubly as a citizen of Marshalltown, pay for things outside of the city of Marshalltown, I'm all for it. I think it ought to be spread through the whole county, and the county should for it. I don't know how the smaller towns are able to handle their budgets. And it's not like the city of Marshalltown was having to struggle with the budget at all. Do that here. But I'm here to say that as a mayor, and I haven't polled the 7 city councilors to see if they would agree with this, but I suspect they would. But I personally, as a voter, citizen, taxpayer, think the county should be absorbing this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I actually didn't have anything to say, but I'm sure will. Just a couple of things on the 911 side. So, while there is, I can absolutely see a side. I'm one of those people that I can literally see 2 sides of pretty much every point. So while I can see a side of, saving money and so on and so forth, and let's say that, we used it for the radios that break, then you have the innate problems of, okay, well, let's just say LeGrand is always breaking the radios and the money continues to go from them. There's going to be a bottom of that barrel. Breaking the radios. But what I'm saying is that there's also a benefit of not having to do that because, and Brad has done, of course, there's more than one Brad in here, but Fonz has done a really good job of making sure that he's collecting that information and his numbers are not wrong. Okay, so you've got, 2 very, very different sides of this. We still have to look at the 10, 15 years down the road. I'm that person that you got to look at those steps down the road. Okay. But at the same time, what is the here and now and what does that cost? So is there, a gradual step? Is there something that we can look at? Okay. So we've got, 5 years plan or 10 years plan or so on and so forth. But when you're looking at emergency services, one of the things that maybe the two of you may not know about me, that I know that Steve does, is this is my fourth agency and fourth state and fourth jurisdiction. So I have a lot of experience coming to me being one of probably the newest people to Marshall County in this room, right? Having said that, there's something that's very innately different about a volunteer community versus a community that is not driven and survives off of volunteerism. So when you're looking at volunteerism, one of the things that I would ask that, you know, we keep in mind is what are the circumstances and what do we need for Marshall County? Okay. And in Marshall County, we need things that are different than Story County or Polk County or whatever the case may be. And those things are going to come down to what makes it work here, right? So what works here is going to be very, very different than any other county. So having said that, with the needs that these gentlemen have kind of started telling you, and there's a lot of people that have not spoken, there is, I live out in the county, even though Marshall County is probably closer to get it to me, I don't live in the city, and I live that way purposely because I like the county, right? But I can also tell you that when I've had to have an ambulance come to my house, he's responded first and had to take care of me. He has. And I'm just gonna tell people that last year I had a couple of surgeries and Patrick had to be there. So they need that equipment to be having to sacrifice one level for the other. We all have budgets and we all have to determine what are we going to be able to buy with those budgets? What do we need in the future? And what do we have money left for? I would hate to say that, you know, they're not going to have the equipment. I know that things have changed. They don't get some of the materials that they used to be able to get. Like, what are the costs and what are the needs? You know, the next time is he going to come to my house and, well, I don't have this piece of equipment, right? Or, you know, my wife falls and breaks her leg. Well, I don't have a leg split for you, but I can stand here and wait for you and make sure you're breathing, right? So just different needs. We want to make sure that they have the budget because let's just face it, they don't have to volunteer. They don't have to. And that would be a problem for Marshall County. So just from the outsider looking in, because I have that experience, if that helps.
Thank you, Rhonda.
Welcome.
Tim, did you have anything to add? Sheriff?
I would like to say,
Yes, thank
I'm
you.
Sherry King, Unity Point Health, Marshall Town Administrator. I want to first thank you. You've done a fantastic job of summarizing where we've been and all the work that's gone into this over the last 3.5 years. I would ask you to consider that Unity Point Health Marshall Town be included in this consideration as well. And I would advocate for it being a county service rather than a charged service at this point. There are many places which Chief Hunt's already captured where we go all over the county as well. Even if a volunteer service can't be there, then we're going to be there. We might be a little behind them, but we will get there as well. A rising tide raises all boats. And this is one of those cases where I think we can more adequately do that using the system as provided as a county service.
Excellent.
If we absorb these costs, if the county takes this over, then it doesn't charge anything. Marshall Town residents are going to be a part of this then too. And I assume they're going to be okay with this, or they just have to be okay with it. Do you have any comments?
Larry Ricky was Lemons File. It came up, and I believe it was the October meeting, probably you were there and part weren't, but we had it out to the jail. And I asked Rhonda if we could take that money out of her 9-1, and she said that's a different account, so we couldn't do that. At that time, Mike Lottie-Hoff was pro tem mayor for the city, and he was at that meeting. And what he proposed was put so many cents per thousand on your taxable valuation. And like Brad says, we're looking at 5-6 years out on that. If we would put, you know, just so many cents, I mean, it don't have to be a strong amount, just a little bit onto there. That takes care of everybody's problems, spreads it around everybody. And I know at the time there was concern that the people that were renting wouldn't get paid. Well, you and I all know that if you was a property owner, you're going to have to rent up to make up for it in the end. So I believe if there's a need, And like I say, part of your new one here, but if there's a need, first of all, I don't think the volunteer departments at all, we shouldn't be charged at all. We're volunteering our time. We have to cut the budget, just like it's been mentioned earlier. What are we gonna give up? We're at full amount up there already, just the cost of these radios and stuff and going through the insurance and everything's going up every year. And I have a hard time talking to our trustees and trying to explain where's all this money gonna come from? You know, I mean, it's just one of them things that it's there, but if we was to look at it, like Brad says, 5 or 6 years, we think we need to maybe have some money into there. Then put on so many cents a thousand, everybody shares in that cost, and I think it eliminates us having to figure out how we're gonna come up out of our budget, so. I know, I just, you know, I appreciate you looking at it from that standpoint.
I think the way I look at it is when we get into this, a lot of times we get into the details and we kind of forget to look back at the big picture. And we're looking at big picture here. Who's paying for this? It's the individual taxpayer. And I think what the previous board was doing, I think what happened was they had this new expenditure of these operating costs and looking to the future and thought, hey, these access fees, here's a way that we can recoup the cost and this can help in our budget. That logic it's good logic. It's not bad logic. I appreciated that our member Slosik here spearheaded in reducing it down to $10. But what we're still hearing is this is an issue for our small towns and townships. And because of that, when you look big picture, it's almost like we're pitting government versus government. And this government, well, because it's a little bit more difficult for our budget, we're going to go ask another budget to pay for it. Also, you're getting a little bit inequitable amongst certain townships, towns, what have you. And so I see this as something that would be much simpler if it's broad across the entire county, that all county taxpayers pay for, well, basically for the fixed operating cost, because the county owns it. Since the county board of supervisors decided to own it, it makes sense that those are our costs. And in the end, it's probably more efficient to have the county taxpayer paying under Marshall County as a whole pay it versus pitting governments versus governments. That's just kind of my logic at looking at this. At the same time, I think we need to get what I'd like to see, and you guys will decide what we want to decide, but what I'd like to see is that we waive the access fees for now, but we need to be looking at the future of the infrastructure. We got to address the need that's now. This helps our local fire departments, our local townships and towns, but we are not looking to the future of this future infrastructure. You know, we don't want to get ourselves into a catastrophic issue 10, 15 years down the road when it's that time. That's just kind of what I'm thinking for discussion point. Any further discussion? Anyone has questions?
The good point is right now, the budget meetings with the townships is the 13th and 14th of February. So this timing of making this decision is really good for the township budgets.
To plan. So I'll just add, I appreciate Brad, you and all of your work and everything you've done to get us this far. I know there's been a lot of work and information. It sounds like you've gone above and beyond to gather information from other places, and that's always helpful for me in making decisions, because I don't think we should be you know, doing things that are just completely outside of what's standard procedures for counties to do in this. And I also just don't like the idea of burdening volunteer departments around the county. So, you know, I would be in favor of spreading this countywide and not having access fees.
I'll make a motion to rescind the access fees.
I'll second that.
For clarification, is Unity Point included in this?
Yes.
Yes. Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Slosik moved to rescind the access fees for all service providers, second by Hibbs.
You said access fees, including Unity Point.
Roll call vote, Kyle.
Yes,
Foster,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
and
motion carries. Thank you very much. You guys are welcome to stick around for the rest of our business, but
Or escape.
Save yourself.
I would run.
Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you.
you're welcome. Thanks for being here and sharing with us your story.
But we had too many public walking all over the courthouse.
Well, I tell you what, your personnel really trend them.
Well, that's not. What's your goal? To get out?
The meeting's not quite over.
Yeah.
Do I would?
Guys, one guy, one truck.
Yeah, yeah.
So the flight was gonna take
Okay.
2.5 hours. We literally ran miles in the trying to catch an extra. I about had a heart attack. I get this. And then on the way home, same deal.
Just proceed.
But anyway.
Yeah.
Should I keep
We
rolling?
made it.
Just a second.
United Airlines. Right out.
And everything's picked up.
It was really great.
I thought of you a lot and when you were dealing with all the crud here.
Yeah. It was like ice skating.
I bet.
All right, we will move along to, back to number 6. Approved transfer of funds, a quarterly transfer of 700,000 from rural services fund to secondary road fund. Do I have a motion?
I'll move we approve the transfer of funds.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion?
This is just a normal transfer that we do. This comes from Maria.
Thank you. Roll call vote, please.
Kyle.
Yes.
Foster,
Yes.
Ed,
Yes.
Number 7, Marshall County Emergency Siren Project Discussion and Possible Action. That's a retainage of attorney for Marshall County Emergency Siren Project Procurement and Installation, and authorized chair to sign necessary contracts if necessary.
So if you want me to just talk, we've Siri's talking to us. So we have approval. Kim got approval on her grant for the siren project for the county in the unincorporated.
Yeah, right now it's incorporated.
Incorporated
Yep.
areas, so the small towns.
Yep.
And we need to start this process because in the infinite wisdom of how the grant works, the date she applied in October is when the year starts.
So we have to be done by October 17th of this year.
Of
So,
23.
yeah,
So
we still
need
have an
help.
RFP to write and
Yeah, we need help in how that process works. So we want to reach out to Ehlers and Cooney, but we need your approval to do so that we do all the steps appropriately.
And it's a county grant because it was advised by FEMA, if you can do a whole county grant and do it together, you'll more than likely get the grant, which we did. So the county had agreed to basically funnel the money for the.
Kim did the grant writing
Right,
work, but it's a county-wide
for the
grant.
countywide grant. So, and I don't have, I have it somewhere in my bag, but the incorporated areas that opted in will get their sirens with this grant. And then our goal was to go for another similar grant to do the unincorporated area. So we already have the population study and that done, but we've worked to do several of the siren areas. We've already worked and mapped them and that, but we need to, we need to make sure we're doing this RFP correctly. Since it's such a large project, it falls into a lot of different categories than I've dealt with before. So, yeah.
Also makes me a little nervous on the supply chain issues
Yeah.
with the timing of
Do
having.
you- I guess that was a question. Do you see a problem in getting it done on time?
If we need an extension, of course FEMA does not like extensions, but they also know what we've been running into with any kind of project right now. We'll need to know by about mid-August if we need.
It's
an
usually about
extension.
3 months, 90
Yeah,
days
yeah.
ahead. They want to know if you need an
So-
extension.
So that's kind of what they said is, get going, push forward. We've got a lot of good information. I've got files and files of what we need, what will work with our current system. We're retaining some of the VHF system. Matter of fact, we went through that with the radio governance board last Thursday night to make sure that some of these old antennas aren't pulled because we're going to be using those. So yeah, we've got a lot of the background done. We just need to make sure we're doing the RFP correctly. And procurement.
Process
That-
correctly.
I haven't had anything to drink. I need something. Yeah, so just making sure that we're doing it correctly so that the county doesn't get in trouble for doing it right.
That's
Try to
right.
Make sure I do it right.
Anything else from anybody? We have a motion to retain an attorney.
I'll make a motion to approve retainage of attorney for Marshall County Emergency Siren Project procurement and installation, authorized chair to sign necessary contracts if necessary, and file quarterly report or siren project.
I'll second that.
Motion and a second, roll call vote, please.
Kyle.
Yes,
Walter.
Yes.
Garrett.
Yes.
motion carries. On to number 8, courthouse change orders, discussion and possible action. Lucas, could you give us a little explanation here?
Yeah, so if we're looking at the 5 items here, this is just kind of a cleanup of this discussion that we've already had kind of through the budget meetings and things like that. Getting the actual change orders in place so we can have everything in line. If you look at the majority of the money there, it's in the damages. There's $13,500 for code that goes in damages as well. We just coded a little differently, and then there's some money that we're expecting our insurance company to pay. So a lot of it's straightforward. It's just kind of house cleaning things.
Excellent. Any questions for Lucas?
Yeah, I'm gonna probably ask the same question. Do
Yeah.
you see any problems in getting everything needed, or do we already have it secured?
Most of this stuff's, a lot of it's labor,
No.
really. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, probably half of the money here is just labor.
The switches, we were able to get switches. with that?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we're pretty lucky on those, and I actually think they've had them for a while.
Well,
This has been kind of going back and forth between our architect and mechanical engineer for a while. So, yeah, they're, I think, already here.
okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the change order request by Holt Construction for courthouse in the amount of $111,736.61, and authorize the chair to sign the change order contract documents.
I'll second.
A motion and a second, roll call vote, please.
Kyle.
Yes,
Walter.
Yes.
Yes.
we completed number 9, so we are now on to number 10, public forum. Time set aside for the public to make comments on topics of county business other than those listed on the agenda. No action will be taken on these topics today. Dan, go ahead. I know that you told us you had some stuff for us.
I
so.
do have some things, and during the budget meetings last week with the board, we've had discussions on moving the Board of Supervisor meetings from Tuesdays to Wednesdays, and also moving them out of this location and moving them to the sheriff's office until we get back to into the courthouse. That'll free up the space for the courts to just kind of continue to use this. And we won't have to do the Tuesday morning reorganization to get this back into place. And sheriff's office works really well for those meetings as well. So kind of watch the agendas online closely as to where they're going to be. Our next meeting is scheduled for January 31st. We're planning to keep that date, but that one will be at the sheriff's office. And then the next meeting will be February 15th. We'll switch that to a Wednesday. So it's just one day later. And then the next meeting will go to March 1st, which seems kind of weird, but it's a short month. So just kind of watch And I'll get those all on everyone's calendars. And so just wanted to give everybody a little heads up on that.
Do we need an invitation from the sheriff to?
I don't know that he's gonna allow it.
We're going whether he wants us or not.
Okay.
The rooms
That's
work really
nice.
well out
That's
there.
very nice.
Yeah, it's a good location. And as long as nobody gets in the wrong elevator,
Oh,
it works
no.
out
It's
awesome.
entertaining otherwise.
Bill only did it a few times.
I mean,
We'll point it out to Carol. We'll show her that there's a wrong elevator.
I've already been there.
well, we're hoping that, it won't be long, we'll be back in the courthouse, but with all election stuff and everything that's going on this, excuse me, not just elections, but
The
the courts, more importantly. This just frees that up for any scheduling issues. We have the Zoom capabilities that appear to be much simpler, set up for IT to be there at the sheriff's office. So we kicked around the idea of maybe the library or something else, but technology wise and everything else, it's just more simplified for us to do that. And for those that can't maybe make it out to the sheriff's office, we have the Zoom, so.
We need to accommodate the court system as much as we can for what.
And their schedule's really getting busy. At the end of the year, it seems like with the holidays, they move things a little bit more, I think. I don't think anybody wants to send anybody to jail at Christmas. It seems like it's kind of mean. And that's just me from the outside looking in, but it just seems like that's kind of the way. So they've been really busy. So just wanted to kind of give everybody a heads up on that.
I just got some more details on sirens. I know a couple of the cities were wanting to hear some information. Just a reminder, when I applied for the grant, it was a 75 federal, 15 state, 10 local match. And then the Biden administration changed those over to a 90% federal, 10% state, which means there's no local match on that. That did bring our total that was available for us to apply for down quite a bit, about $200,000 less than we expected. But that keeps the locals at 0%. And I'm getting that information back out to the cities. I did remind them we are able to get an advance too on that. So that'll be nice when it comes to paying for things.
That
So,
would be great.
yeah.
Because we're still waiting on derecho money.
yeah, if we can apply for an advance, we'll do that as quickly as we know that we have, the vendor.
Mhm.
So, yep. So that was all I needed on that. I just wanted to remind everybody.
Thank you, Kim. Anyone else in here? Does anybody on Zoom have a comment? Doesn't sound like it. All right, adjournment. The next regular session is January 31st, 2023, 9 a.m. And that will be at the sheriff's office. All business to be acted upon at that session should be submitted to the auditor recorder's office or the county board of supervisors office by Wednesday, January 25th at noon. There being no further business coming before the board, the meeting is adjourned at 10:03 a.m.
There will also be a January 23rd special at 1 p.m. for comp board
That is correct, yes.
at the sheriff's office. You're gonna get tired of us.
Absolutely.
He doesn't have to deal with.
Somebody just asked me, why was the comp board not on this meeting?